The gallery smelled like old varnish and older money. Simone Laurent did not flinch when David Rothko tossed her portfolio onto the marble floor. Didn't gasp when 8 months of work, canvas photographs, sketches, artist statements, scattered across the pristine white like debris. This, he gestured with his wine glass, burgundy sloshing. This is what you're calling art. She looked at the pages, at her life spread across his floor. No trembling lip, no tears, just stillness, heavier than rage. David checked his watch. Patek Philippe. Naturally. I have a collector arriving in 20 minutes. Unless you'd like to pick up your work and see yourself out? Simone's hands rested at her sides. She studied him, the man who thought he held all the power in this room. I see, she said quietly. And she knelt, not in submission, in precision, gathering each page like it mattered. Because it did. David turned away, already dismissing her from his mind, and she allowed herself one glance toward the back wall of the Rothko Gallery, the private viewing room where the real money changed hands. She wondered if he'd checked his email yet. Probably not. Men like David never rushed. 72 hours earlier, the invitation had arrived on a Monday. Subject: portfolio review opportunity. Rothko Gallery. Simone had read it 3 times in her Harlem studio. Autumn light slanting through windows that never quite closed all the way. Her coffee going cold beside a canvas that had taken her 6 weeks to complete. The Rothko Gallery wanted to see her work. The Chelsea institution that had launched careers, brokered million-dollar sales, represented artists who showed at the Whitney and the Guggenheim. They found her through an online exhibition, a group show featuring emerging artists from New York's outer boroughs. Her piece, a massive triptych exploring memory, migration, and blackness through abstract portraiture, had been featured on the website. 12 people had seen it in person. 400,000 had seen it online. One of them, apparently, worked for David Rothko. The email seemed legitimate, professional. It offered a 30-minute portfolio review. No promises, but genuine interest in fresh voices. Fresh voices. Code, usually. But Simone had learned to navigate code. She'd taken the subway to Chelsea on Wednesday afternoon. The Rothko Gallery occupied a converted warehouse on 25th Street. 3 floors of white walls, track lighting, and art that cost more than most people earned in a year. Simone had arrived in a simple black dress, her locks wrapped in a silk scarf her grandmother had sent from Port-au-Prince, her portfolio, 10 years of work, in a leather case she'd saved for months to buy. You carry your worth with you, her grandmother had said. They'll see it where they want. But you know what you hold. The reception area was stark. A young man at the desk, white, stylish, bored, had looked up slowly. Deliveries are around back. Simone had smiled. The smile she perfected over 31 years. I have a 2 p.m. with David Rothko. A pause. Too long. Name: Simone Laurent. Typing. A flicker of something: surprise? Confusion? Crossing his face. Right. I'll let him know you're here. She'd waited 25 minutes. Standing. There were chairs, mid-century modern, probably Danish, but she hadn't sat. Hadn't wanted to seem too comfortable. When David finally appeared, he moved like a man who'd never been kept waiting in his life. 50s, slim, expensive, casual in a way that required effort to look effortless. Simone. No handshake. Come. She'd followed him through halls lined with paintings, abstract expressionism, contemporary surrealism. One room dedicated entirely to a single sculptor whose work resembled twisted metal screaming. We don't typically do open portfolio reviews, David said, not looking back. But Marcus saw your triptych online. Thought it had energy. Energy. Not skill. Not vision. Energy. They'd reached a smaller viewing room. White walls. A single table. Show me what you've got. Simone had opened her portfolio. For the next 15 minutes, she presented. Explained her process, the layering technique, the use of ancestral photographs as texture beneath abstract forms, the way she built narrative through color and negative space. David had looked at each piece, said nothing. When she finished, he leaned back. Interesting. The word landed like a door closing. But, Simone prompted. But it's derivative. Kahai and Wiley did the photorealism meets pattern thing. Micheline Thomas did the collage plus portraiture. You are remixing. I'm building on tradition. Every artist does. Every unoriginal artist, maybe. He slid the portfolio back across the table. Look, There's a market for this kind of work. Community centers, college galleries. But serious collectors? They want innovation. Not homework. Homework. Simone had kept her face neutral. What would make it serious? David had smiled then. Thin and sharp. Honestly, a different artist. He stood. You're talented. I'm sure you'll find your audience. It's just not here. She'd begun gathering her work. Wait. David had pulled out his phone, scrolled, showed her a painting. This sold last month. 600,000. No what? The painting was competent, technically skilled, utterly safe. The artist understood his lane, David continued. Gave collectors what they wanted. Maybe you should think about that. What they want, Simone repeated. Exactly. She'd closed the portfolio. Stood. Thank you for your time. Of course. And Simone. He'd walked her to the door. Advice? Your work is very political, very identity-focused. That limits your market. You might consider broadening your themes. Translation, stop being so black. She'd said nothing, just left. But she'd made a call from the subway platform to a number she'd been told to save for when the moment was right. When Simone returned to the Rothko Gallery at 4 p.m. on Friday, David hadn't expected her. I'd like to discuss my work again, she'd said. He'd sighed, checked his watch. I thought I was clear. You were, but I have new pieces. Just 5 minutes. Something in her calm had made him relent. Fine. 5. She'd laid out the portfolio. He'd glanced at it, and that's when he'd thrown it on the floor. This is garbage, he'd said. Sentimental, amateurish garbage. I don't know who told you you're an artist, but they lied. Now, kneeling, gathering her work, Simone heard his phone buzz. Once. Twice. 3 times. For God's sake, David muttered, pulling it out. His face went white. The first notification was from Art News. David stared at his phone, the screen glowing against his suddenly pale face. What the? Simone continued gathering her portfolio. Slowly, each page smoothed. Each photograph returned to its protective sleeve. David scrolled. Faster now. The headline, Whitney Museum acquires major work by emerging artist Simone Laurent for $2 million. Below it, an image. Her triptych. The one from the online exhibition. The one 12 people had seen in person. This is. David's voice cracked. This can't be right. Simone stood, portfolio secured. She said nothing. His phone buzzed again. An email notification. Then another. He opened the first. From Marcus Chen, Senior Curator, Whitney Museum of American Art Subject. Urgent. Simone Laurent contact information. David. I saw that Laurent had a portfolio review scheduled with you this week. We've just acquired her triptych, Inheritance, Interruption, Invention, and are in talks for a solo exhibition next fall. If she's still available, I'd like an introduction. This is priority. Best. Marcus. David looked up at Simone, standing calm and unbothered by his door. How did you? I should go, Simone said. You have a collector coming. Wait. His voice sharp now. Recovering. Wait. Let me see that portfolio again. You called it garbage. I was harsh. But if the Whitney is interested, clearly I missed something. Let's talk seriously. Representation. A proper show. Simone tilted her head slightly. I thought it was derivative. Art is subjective. I may have been too quick to dismiss work you called sentimental and amateurish 30 seconds ago. David's jaw tightened. Ms. Laurent, I run one of the most important galleries in New York. If you want a career, a real career, you need someone like me. Do I? His phone buzzed again. He glanced down. Another notification. Art Forum this time. The Whitney's bold bet. Simone Laurent and the New Canon of American Art. The article featured quotes from the museum's director. A photo of Simone in her studio. A detailed analysis of her technique. The layering, the ancestral photographs, the narrative built through color. Everything David had dismissed. This doesn't make sense, he muttered. You were nobody. You are nobody. Simone finished. Yes, you made that clear. I didn't mean you did. The door chimed. David's 4:20 appointment. A woman in Chanel, hair silver, heels clicking on marble. David, darling. She air-kissed him, then noticed Simone. Paused. Oh, Simone Laurent. Simone turned. The woman extended her hand. Catherine Hale. I was just reading about your Whitney acquisition. Extraordinary. That triptych, I saw it online months ago. Nearly bought it myself. Thank you. Are you represented? Not yet. Catherine's eyes brightened. I'd love to discuss. Ms. Laurent was just leaving. David interrupted. We were finishing a meeting. Catherine looked between them. Oh, are you taking her on? Silence. David's mouth opened. Closed. We were discussing possibilities. Discussing, Simone echoed. After you threw my work on the floor and called it garbage. Catherine's expression froze. I'm sorry. Simone, that's not. David started. Your words, Mr. Rothko. 20 minutes ago. Catherine stepped back from David like he'd become contagious. You said what? It was a misunderstanding. Artistic disagreement. You threw her portfolio on the floor. Catherine. But Catherine was already turning to Simone. My gallery is in Tribeca. Smaller than Rothko, but we prioritize artists over egos. May I give you my card? Simone accepted it. Thank you. I'll be in touch. Congratulations on the Whitney. Catherine looked at David. We'll reschedule our meeting. I need to think about whether I want to continue our partnership. She left. David stood in the sudden silence, phone still buzzing in his hand. You've made a mistake, he said quietly. Have I? You don't understand how this world works. The Whitney bought one piece. That doesn't make you. Doesn't make me what? Simone's voice was soft. Dangerous. Legitimate. Serious? Worth your time. I'm trying to help you. No. You're trying to save yourself. She walked to the door. People will hear about this, David called after her. How difficult you are. How unprofessional. Simone paused. Turned. Let them hear. I'd rather be difficult than erased. Outside, the October air was sharp and clear. Simone walked 3 blocks before she let herself exhale. Her phone rang. A New York number she didn't recognize. Ms. Laurent? This is Jennifer Moss from the Museum of Modern Art. I know you've just closed a deal with the Whitney, but we're curating a group exhibition on contemporary portraiture, and we'd love to include your work. Do you have a moment to talk? Simone leaned against a building, closed her eyes. Yes, she said. I have time. By evening, the art world was talking. Not about David Rothko. About Simone. The Whitney's acquisition had been announced strategically, timed to coincide with their fall programming reveal. But the price point was the headline. $2 million. For an emerging artist. For a black woman who had been showing in community galleries and online exhibitions. The message was clear. We're investing in a career, not a moment. David saw it all unfold from his gallery office. The Instagram post from other artists, congratulations, celebrations, a few pointed comments about gatekeepers who can't see talent. The think pieces already being drafted. The Art News article that included a quote from Marcus Chin. Lawrent's work challenges us to reconsider whose stories we've centered and whose we've dismissed. That's not political. That's essential. Political. David's own word, thrown back. His assistant knocked. David? Catherine Hale's office called. She's canceling her exhibition. What? She said she's reevaluating partnerships. Her assistant mentioned something about ethical alignment. David closed his eyes. And there are people outside. What people? Art students. They're taking photos. Posting about what happened with Ms. Laurent. He looked out the window. 15 people. Maybe 20. Phones raised. Rothko Gallery was already trending locally. His phone buzzed. A text from Marcus Chun. Heard what happened. Really disappointed, David. Let's talk next week. Another buzz. A board member from the gallery's nonprofit arm. We need to discuss today's incident. Call me. David set the phone down. His hands were shaking. The fall was slower than David expected. Simone didn't watch it happen. Didn't need to. She had work to do. The Whitney exhibition was scheduled for September, 11 months away. They wanted 12 new pieces. Large scale. Ambitious. Her studio became a temple of focused creation. She worked 18-hour days. Layering ancestral photographs. Her grandmother, great aunts, women whose names she'd learned from family Bibles and fading letters, beneath bold abstractions that spoke to resilience, reinvention, becoming. Sometimes she thought about David Rothko. Not with anger. With clarity. He'd shown her exactly who he was. What he believed. How quickly he tried to reverse course when her value became undeniable. The art world had a short memory for scandal, but it had a long memory for value. By December, David's gallery was struggling. Catherine Hale had pulled her show. 2 other artists had quietly left. Collectors started asking questions about judgment, about taste, about whether David's eye could still be trusted. Simone heard about it from other artists. The whisper network that connected them all. She didn't celebrate, just kept painting. In January, a letter arrived at her studio. Physical mail. Rare now. The return address, Rothko Gallery. She almost didn't open it. But curiosity won. Inside, a single page. Handwritten. Ms. Laurent, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. What I said about your work was unforgivable. Not just wrong, cruel. I told myself I was being honest, protecting standards. I see now what I was actually protecting, my own limited vision. I've spent 30 years in this industry. I thought I knew quality, but I'd only learned to recognize what I'd been taught to value. You didn't need my validation. You never did. I'm writing because I want you to know I'm closing the gallery. Not because of business, though that suffered. Because I can't keep doing this work if I can't see clearly. I'm selling the space. The proceeds will establish a grant fund for artists from underrepresented communities. It won't undo the damage I've done, but it's a start. You taught me that art isn't about what makes collectors comfortable. It's about truth. Thank you for that lesson. David Rothko. Simone read it twice. Then she set it aside and returned to her canvas. The Whitney exhibition opened on a perfect September evening. Simone Laurent, Inheritance and Invention, took over the museum's 4th floor. 12 massive pieces. Her triptych as centerpiece. The opening was invitation only. Collectors, curators, critics, people who'd ignored her work for years, suddenly desperate to be first in line. Simone wore a dress her grandmother had made. Indigo fabric with gold threading, traditional Haitian techniques meeting contemporary design. She stood in the center of the gallery as people circulated, voices hushed with that particular reverence museums demanded. Marcus Chin found her by the triptych. How does it feel? He asked. Simone looked at her work, at the faces of her ancestors layered beneath bold, geometric forms, at the stories she'd told about survival and transformation. It feels like breathing, she said. Marcus smiled. We've had 17 acquisition offers. Museums. Private collectors. One from Berlin. Which pieces? All of them. She laughed. Couldn't help it. The board wants you to know, whatever you create next, we want first look. I'll think about it. Fair enough. Marcus paused. I heard about Rothko. That he's closing. I heard. You don't seem surprised. Men like that. Simone chose her words carefully. They build their authority on other people's silence. Once you speak, the foundation cracks. You spoke. I existed. That was enough. After the opening, Simone walked through the galleries alone. The museum had given her a key. She could come back any time for the next 6 months. She stood in front of her triptych and thought about the 12 people who'd seen it in Brooklyn, the 400,000 who'd seen it online, the millions who would. See it here. Her phone buzzed. A text from her grandmother. Saw the photos. Your mother would be proud. I am proud. You carried us with you. Simone's eyes stung. She typed back, always. Another text. Catherine Hale. Your exhibition is extraordinary. I'd still love to discuss representation if you're interested. No pressure. Just respect. Simone considered it. She'd met with 4 galleries since leaving Rothko. All of them polite, professional, careful. Catherine had been the only one who'd witnessed what happened and chosen a side immediately. Let's talk next week, Simone replied. She put her phone away. One more walk through the exhibition, taking it in. The magnitude of this moment. 12 paintings. 10 years of work. A lifetime of stories. This wasn't the end. It was permission to continue. 3 months later, Simone sat in her studio. Morning light poured through the windows. She'd finally gotten them fixed. New canvases lined the walls. Larger than before. More ambitious. She was building a series on migration. Not the trauma of it. That had been told. The complexity. The joy alongside the loss. The cultures created in diaspora. Her phone rang. A Miami number. Ms. Laurent? This is Andrea Suarez. I'm a curator at the Paris Art Museum. We're organizing a biennial on Caribbean contemporary art and would love to include your work. Would you be interested? Simone looked at the canvas before her, at the layered faces taking shape. Tell me more, she said. 5 months after the Whitney opening, Simone received an email from a young woman in Detroit. 23. Painter. Black. Ms. Laurent, I saw your exhibition. I've never seen work like mine in a space like that. I didn't know it was possible. I'm sending you photos of my paintings. I'm not asking for anything. Just, thank you. For making space. Attached were 12 images. Simone opened them slowly. The work was raw, unrefined. But there, beneath the technical growing pains, was vision. She hit reply. Your work has power. Keep building. If you're ever in New York, let me know. I'd like to meet. 1 year after David Rothko threw her portfolio on the floor, Simone Laurent stood on a panel at the Brooklyn Museum. Making Space, Black Women Artists Reshaping the Canon for Artists. One moderator. An audience of 300. The moderator asked, what advice would you give to emerging artists facing gatekeepers who don't see their value? Simone leaned into the microphone. Build anyway, she said. The gates aren't the only way in. And sometimes the people guarding them are just protecting their own limitations. Applause. After the panel, 12 artists approached her, showed her their work on phones and tablets, asked questions about galleries, pricing, grants. She gave them her email. Send me your portfolios, she said. I can't promise anything except that I'll look. That night, alone in her studio, Simone stood before her newest painting. It wasn't finished. Might take another month. But she could see where it was going. Could see the whole series now. 20 pieces. Maybe 30. Her phone buzzed. A reminder. Studio visit tomorrow. Catherine Hale, 2 p.m. Catherine was good. Professional. Connected. She'd already placed 3 of Simone's pieces with serious collectors. But more than that, she listened. Simone set the phone down and made tea. She thought about David sometimes. Wondered what he was doing now. The grant fund had launched. She'd heard from 2 artists who'd received money from it. Maybe that was his atonement. Or maybe it was just the start of his learning. Either way, it wasn't her concern. She had paintings to finish. Stories to tell. Gates to walk past. 2 years after the Whitney acquisition, Inheritance and Invention toured to 5 museums. 3 years after, Simone's work sold for $4 million at auction. For years after, she opened her own studio program. Free space and materials for emerging artists who couldn't afford rent. And 5 years after David Rothko called her work garbage, Simone Laurent stood in the Museum of Modern Art, surrounded by her first permanent installation. A reporter asked how it felt. Simone looked at the walls lined with her ancestors' faces, transformed into monuments. It feels like proof, she said. Of what? That they were wrong. And I was always right. She smiled. Not in triumph. In peace. Because the gates had never mattered. She'd built her own.